All right, looks like we've got a good group here, so let's get started. Thank you for joining us today, especially with the sort of last minute reschedule there. Thanks for bearing with us on a scheduling snafu, so to speak. Um, my name is Holly. I am one of the customer success folks here at Giraffe. And today I'm going to take you through some of the processes to find and upload spatial data. Um, so in Giraffe, all of your spatial data acts as layers over on your left-hand panel in the Giraffe window. And of course, Giraffe comes preloaded with literally thousands of data layers from around the world. But you might have some additional ones from your local government agency or other source that you want to add into your projects. And that's what today's webinar is all about, how to go about loading that information into your projects and then reusing it. So let's dive right in. Um, the first thing I wanted to touch on is what kinds of data formats we accept or work with in your Giraffe projects. Um, so those data formats are in sort of three broad categories, which are vector, raster, or API. These are sort of the different types that you can select when you're going to upload. And then within each of those categories, there are some specific file types that work. Um, so under vector, we have GeoJSON, shapefile, and KML. GeoJSON and shapefiles are sort of, platform agnostic, very standard spatial data formats. Um, a quick aside, everything in Giraffe is actually natively in GeoJSON. So sort of a cool behind the scenes there. Whenever you're drawing something, it's automatically creating a GeoJSON format. You could actually just Control C, Control V, a giraffe geometry into any other GeoJSON editor, which is most spatial software. So that's kind of cool there. And then shapefile is very standard across the board for your sort of vector downloads for spatial data. You'll see that on almost any website where you're able to download spatial information. Um, KML is Google Earth's proprietary format. We do allow you to upload KML files. And then from CAD, which there are various CAD programs, but the most commonly used one from probably your architects is going to be AutoCAD. We do allow uploading the DXF format, but as we'll see a little bit later, there are some caveats to that. And then the last sort of vector format that we work with is a CSV spreadsheet of addresses. And we'll also go through sort of the particulars of uploading those. Um, Under the raster category, we have your standard image files, your JPEG or your PNG, and then you can also upload PDFs. We'll take a look at raster in more detail later on, but raster uploads are basically you're uploading an image onto the map, sort of stretching it to fit and having it placed there. It is not sort of pre-spatially geolocated. You're kind of manually geolocating those raster uploads. And then our last sort of category is our APIs. And APIs are, in my opinion, really great for spatial data, especially spatial data that is updated regularly. Because when you create a layer in Giraffe from an API endpoint, it will automatically keep that data up to date for as long as that endpoint is being made available. So with a vector, it is sort of a point in time. When you upload it, it is that version. And if you need to update the information, you'll need to re-upload a new one. versus the APIs are always constantly being updated. And the two sort of API endpoints that we connect to are Esri or WMS. With Esri, you can use map server, feature server, scene server, or image server, actually, which is not on my slide. But those are the different types of Esri endpoints that we connect to. And then with WMS, you just need to make sure that your WMS link has get capabilities, which means that you're sort of allowed to extract that data and put it into another platform. Thinking of those data types that we just looked at, I sort of have a, good, better, best, or best, good, or okay rating for those. This is take with a grain of salt because the best data is the data you have access to. But if you do have choices between different formats for the same data type, you might want to choose the format that is a little bit more flexible, which is for the most part, why I would give something a better rating. So in my best gold standard favorite category are your Esri feature servers, your GeoJSON, and your shapefiles. The reason I rate these as best is because they are all vectorized formats. They're either a vector upload or the Esri feature server is vectorized. And that means that you are going to have additional capabilities within Giraffe of sort of filtering, styling, sharing, and making that data really work for you. You have the ability to open those in our data table, which gives you all those additional functionalities. And we'll take a look at the data table later on so you can see what I'm talking about. Um, the next sort of rating I give as good is your Esri map server, scene server, image server, your WMS, Mapbox, and KML. So these formats are um, still better than a straight up raster upload, but they are rasterized, which means that although, especially with the Esri and WMS, the data is always being updated by that API endpoint, you aren't able to filter and sort and search through that data in the same way that you would be if it was a vectorized format. So still really good, and definitely worth using in your projects, but you'll just have slightly less capability and flexibility with those. And then the last set is what I've rated okay. This would be your raster, so your image uploads, your JPEG, your PNG, your PDF, our DXF uploads, and our CSV. We'll look in more detail at the process behind uploading these things later, and you'll probably see why I rated these as okay. Um, Raster generally is great if that is the only format you have. So, you've been sent maybe a PDF of a site plan and you need to load it in because you want to trace it, and that's the only format you have. Go for it. As I said earlier, the best data is the data you have. But if you had a choice between that site plan in raster format or that site plan in a GeoJSON, I would 100% say bring in the GeoJSON. So just keep that in mind as you're working with data in Giraffe. Um, so we went through all of these different data types, but you're probably thinking, wait, how do I even find these, right? Like, how do I go about procuring a GeoJSON file or a shape file or finding an Esri feature server? What does that even look like? So good news for you, we're going to take some time looking at those things today. And before I jump over into our best friend Google to show you how to do that, I wanted to give you just a little bit of a visual on some of those keywords that we're going to use to find data. So my favorite hacks or tricks for finding things in the, Google search algorithm is to use very specific keywords for the types of information that we want to load into Giraffe. So I always want to include the city or the county name, basically the municipality that we're working in that or suspect that there's going to be data that's useful for you stored by. So if it's a large city like Philadelphia, they probably have their own sort of data repository. But if it's a smaller city, like maybe Bryn Mawr in Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Philadelphia, you might have to look up the county instead. And that county level might be where the data is stored for those smaller towns. Um, so these are some different keyword combos that you can try. You can try the city plus open data, the city plus a topic plus GIS. And that GIS is sort of where you're going to end up getting the actual GIS data rather than just getting sort of a map that you can look at. It'll help you drill down into the actual data that you want, either to download or to find that endpoint. Um, or you can get really specific and search for a file type. So my example is the Philadelphia parcels feature server. That'll probably bring you directly to that API endpoint for the feature server. But I could do the same thing where I'm like, I want the Philadelphia building outlines shape file and type that in, and I'll probably find exactly that based on those keywords. So with that being said, let's actually jump into Google and try to find some of these things. So I'm just going to pop over into my Google window here. Um, and just a reminder that during the webinar, if you do have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. And if we get through all of this quickly, I can hang out at the end and you can ask questions live as well. So feel free to stop me at any time by dropping a question in the chat and hopefully I can address it for you. So let me first take a little look at, let's do that Philadelphia parcels feature server as our search and just see what we can find. Um, so I can see already from that search term that I am getting some ArcGIS results. And those ArcGIS results are good. That means I'm finding those Esri feature servers. We can also see as we scroll down, there's some additional things like the Philly Atlas, which anyone who's in Philadelphia is going to be very familiar with. Um, and then even something from PASDA, which is a Penn State service that has lots of different data as well. But I'm just going to go ahead and click on this very first link. And what you'll see here is a website that honestly kind of looks like nothing, right? It's just white and blank and there's no graphics and you're like, what the heck is this? Is this what I'm looking for? Um, and actually, this is what the API endpoint link looks like when you view it in a browser. This is sort of the metadata about the spatial data that's contained within this endpoint. So this is actually exactly what we're looking for. Now, if we wanted to see what this might look like in a more beautiful kind of view, I could go to Philadelphia, open data, ArcGIS. And this is sort of a styled, beautiful version of what we were just looking at. So this is still hosted in ArcGIS, but it's made to look a little bit prettier. And a lot of sort of county websites and municipality websites will look like this. So if you've been playing around with data at all, you've probably seen something that looks kind of like this in the past. But the reason I want to pull it up is to show you how to find the endpoint link from this kind of website. So I'm going to search parcels again in here and just see what we can find. And there's going to be a few different ones. I know that most of, yeah, I mean, let's just do the Keystone Opportunity Zone parcels. Just pull that up for the sake of um, example. So it's taken me to this sort of map view, and I can get a preview of what these parcels are in this map view. But what I want to do is click View Full Details. And that's going to take me to a page that looks like this. And from this page, if I scroll down, I'm going to be able to find a button that says View Data Source. And that's exactly what I need. So I'm going to click on View Data Source. And then lo and behold, this looks just like that last site that we were looking at, right? So that View Data Source button on those ArcGIS styled beautiful websites is how you actually find the API endpoint for that. So I'm going to go back to the original one that I wanted to upload. Um, and actually, I have a, oh, nope, not that one. Um, okay, yeah, I will use this one. So I'm just literally going to copy this URL and go back to my Giraffe window. And that URL is all you need. So once you find that URL, we're going to go straight to Giraffe. And here's where the magic starts to happen. So I've got my map already centered on Philadelphia. So I know that the data in these Philly data sets that I'm downloading is going to show up. Um, and then I'm going to open up my layers palette. And after I upload this data, we'll take another look at the layers palette, but this is sort of your home base for all of the spatial data that you're going to be adding. Um, the place where I want to click if I want to add new spatial data to my project is this Add Data Layer button. It looks like sort of the classic database icon with a plus on it. So I'm going to click on that. And that's actually going to open up our layer library. And our layer library is where those thousands of global data layers live that I was telling you about earlier. So you can definitely come in here and just search for something that might be useful to you before you even go to Google. Like if you're in a location and you search for parcels and you have your filter by map location turned on, you might actually find what you're looking for without even, going afar. But in the case that you don't find the exact thing that you're looking for already uploaded into Giraffe, that's when you can take to Google and sort of start finding those things. All right, back to uploading this Esri layer. I'm going to click Create New Layer. And here are my options here, and they align pretty closely with those categories we were talking about earlier. So remember, we have vector, we have image, which is our raster, and we have Esri and WMS. We are uploading an Esri link. It ends in feature server. So we're going to click on that. And then here is where I'm just going to paste in that URL that I copied. Just going to click paste. And then I'm going to click fetch layers from service. So this has now gathered all of those parcels. This specific data set that I loaded is actually points, which is not my favorite, but it'll work well enough for today. Here, I just found the one that I actually wanted to use. Well, we'll load this anyway, and then we'll load another one. So I have added in this data set, and if I scroll out a little bit, we'll start to see these points kind of generating on the map. You can see down below, because this was a feature server, it is a vector layer, and it's automatically opened our data table. So what this is prompting us to do is actually give this layer some styling before we even save it into the directory. Instead of just keeping sort of the default style that comes with this layer, which is not very useful, it's just pink dots. We can click on the display style here, and actually choose to color those dots based on information that's contained within them. So maybe we want to color them based on building description. And now we see we have a huge amount of categories here. Maybe building description is too much. Building code might also be too much. Let's see. We also just might not have the best information in here. So I'm gonna stick with that building description. And we can actually open this up and sort of see every category that's available to us. We can change the color ramp if we want to, um, and sort of update that. Um, and we can change the individual colors as well if we want. So if we don't like this blue, we can change it to this green, and et cetera, et cetera. Now that I have set this style, when I save the layer into my library, it's always going to retain that style as the default when it is added into my projects. So one cool thing is now that I've uploaded this layer, it is not just available in my project. You can see here that it's been added to my project. I can move it up in the list or down in the list as I please. But it's also been added to my library for myself. So if I search for PHA parcel points, you're going to see that it's now available in my layer library. Um, if I am an admin in my workspace, I can also share this layer with other people. So something to keep in mind, this layer will be available in this project for anyone who's in the project, but it won't show up in the layer library of anyone else unless you share it with them. So if you want to make this layer available for other people, you'll want to open up the manage here, and you can input their names. You can select different teams, or you can select a workspace to share it with. And you'll just invite them, and then those people will have this layer showing up also in their layer library. So just remember to do that. Um, all right, so that was a vector layer example. Let's take a look at a map server example. So I'm going to open up this one. I have a few saved over here on my second screen. And I'm just going to, again, this is another Esri link, but it is a map server. So I'm just going to paste this in here. And I'm going to fetch the layers from the service. And we'll see with this one that there's actually some previews and a few different options for us to upload. The reason for that is this specific endpoint actually has, looks like 5 different layers contained within it, and we want to pick which ones that we actually want to load into our project. So I could pick I could pick this contour one. I could pick this one that's sort of points. Maybe I want my rail locations. I can choose which item from this list is actually the most useful. To load it into my project, I will click the one I want and then click next. And we'll see it start to load. This is a very dense data set, so it'll take a second. And then I can just save that layer. You'll notice with this one, I did not get that pop-up of the data table asking me to style the layer. That's because that styling is not available for rasterized, so map server or WMS. So that's what I was talking about earlier. They're a little bit less flexible than your, vectorized feature server or your GeoJSON or your shapefile. Right. Looks like there's some sort of zoom settings set on this one. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and see if we can get that to load up. But it was a very dense data set, so it may not have been the one to pick. We'll just let that hang out there and see if it comes to us eventually. All right. The next one that I'm going to show you is a GeoJSON file. So I'm just gonna Here we go. We've got it coming here. Whoops. Sorry, on my second screen, I'm trying to get this file open. Perfect. All right. So once again, I am going to jump into that layer library and create a new layer. But this time I'm going to upload a GeoJSON file. So instead of selecting Esri, I'm going to select vector. And then I'm just going to browse for that file on my machine. So I'll come over here on my second window and grab that file from my location. And we can see with this, again, we have that data table popping up asking us to style this, which is really useful. So I can color this by, let's do district. That's probably the most useful one for this if we zoom out a little bit. This specific data set is commercial corridors. So these are sort of zoning overlays that are specific to Philly. And you can see those zoning corridors showing up here now. But something interesting to note when you're uploading a point in time vector file, so your GeoJSON or your shape files, we're going to be prompted whether we want to turn it into a layer or whether we want to import it into our project directly as geometries. 9 times out of 10, you're going to want to import it as a layer and it'll just be sort of background data information in your projects. But sometimes you might want to actually import it as editable geometry. So what you can do, let's see how many there are in here. So there is, I think, I can't remember now if the limit is 200 or 300. Let's see what happens if I click import to project. Aha, the limit is 300 geometries. So all of those uh, outlines have now been added to my project as like native giraffe geometry. They've just been dumped in, no usage assigned onto the default layer. They'll be dumped onto whatever the active drawing layer is. This is really useful if you are maybe a city planner or something like that, where you're going to be doing some capacity studies or zoning studies that are sort of large scale and you want to bring in your existing data, but then mess with it. So that way you can sort of create all of those as geometries and start editing them. I'm going to delete that and go back to my create layer again. And upload that layer. And this time I'm going to turn it into an actual layer. So I'm going to restyle this by district. And then click next and save that layer. And after it's saved, it's going to drop again into my layer palette, just like everything else has. So I now have those commercial corridors. Awesome. Um, the next one I want to show you is a zip file. Or sorry, a shape file. The reason I'm saying zip is because a shape file is actually a collection of multiple files, and it has to remain in that zipped folder altogether, or else, the program that's reading it, whether it's Giraffe or any other spatial program, won't have all of the information it needs to sort of process it. So I'm going to take a look here. You can't see. There we go. So this is what the inside of a shape file looks like. All right. So you're going to have at least one file that actually is called it's just changing there we go. Trying to make it a little larger for you all so you can see it. You're going to see at least one file that actually says .shape, but then you're going to have all these other files in here, and you're like, what is it? Why do I need this? It's because the shape file is sort of a package of different information that all goes together. What you do want to look out for is sometimes when you download a shapefile from a government website, that shapefile actually has multiple data sets within the same zipped folder. So here you can see that everything has the same name. It's all neighborhoods underscore Philadelphia. If you're seeing a file that has, like it might have like 30 files in your zip, and there's maybe five or six different names, you'll have to separate those out into individual zipped directories in order to upload them into Giraffe. Giraffe can't work with a shapefile that has more than one layer inside of it. It needs to be separated by layer. Um, the other sort of limitation that you might run into is uh, uploading a point in time data set. Your limit in Giraffe is 10 megabytes. So what we do see a lot is if your municipality only makes their parcel data available as a shapefile, oftentimes that shapefile is too large to upload. It might be many, many, many times 10 megabytes. Um, and while it is technically possible to upload a file that large into a browser, it is not going to perform very well, which is why we have that limitation set to sort of prevent you from uploading a a vector file that's then going to crash your computer constantly. That wouldn't be helpful for anyone. So we do have that limitation there to help you out. Um, if you need help with dividing up a shapefile, you can reach out to your sort of county or city GIS department, and they might have one that's sort of broken up for you. Um, or check if there is a feature server or map server version of it as opposed to the shapefile. The API, can be global. It doesn't have sort of a limitation on size because it's hosted elsewhere. So that might be another option as well. If you are totally stuck and the only thing you have is this giant shapefile and you need help, just reach out to us at Giraffe and we'll see what we can do to help you out with that specific layer. All right, so let's upload this shapefile finally. I'm going to again browse to my downloads folder. That's where these are living. And this is now exactly the same as uploading that GeoJSON. I'm going to style it. I'm going to style it by name. If we zoom out a little bit, we're going to see the map of Philadelphia and all of our beautiful neighborhoods. They've been colored by name. I click in here. Some of these, a lot of them, the colors might be duplicated because there are so many names here. So again, you can go through and sort of update those colors individually if you wish. I'm not going to take the time to do that today, but it is an option. And then I'm just going to click Save Layer. And I have this lovely shapefile of the Philadelphia neighborhoods added into my project. Awesome. So I'm just going to turn off some of these really quickly because the next one I'm going to show is our DXF file. So as I mentioned earlier on in the webinar, uploading a DXF comes with some caveats. The main one is that typically AutoCAD files are not geolocated. So even though the drawing, is to scale and it's drawn correctly and everything is probably accurate, spatial software doesn't know where that file is supposed to be located on the globe. It's nowhere, right? It's just on a 2D plane of XYZ. If you want to geolocate that file, sometimes CAD files are geolocated, and you can look up what uh, coordinate system they're using and sort of uh, work that into Giraffe. There's instructions on our knowledge base about how to set your project CRS and all of that. I'm also happy to go offline with anyone who needs help doing that specifically. Um, or if it is absolutely not geolocated and you need to geolocate it, one way to do that is to export your Giraffe project boundary, and then copy and paste the DXF into the exported, project boundary of your Giraffe project, and move the drawing into the project boundary in the correct location. Um, that's a lot of work, quite honestly. Sometimes I don't even know that it's going to be worth it for you if you are not a CAD expert downloading all these extra, software to edit it. You could also go back to your architect and ask them to geolocate it. But I know that sometimes getting the DXF file from an architect is a big enough ask as it is. So totally understand that. Um, if you do have it and it is not quite geolocated, don't worry about it. You can import it into Giraffe as line work, just like I showed with um, the outlines from the GeoJSON. You can just drop it into Giraffe and then you select them all, move them into place, and then you've got it. You just lock that drawing layer. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to click Add Data Layer. This DXF also goes under the vector header. I'm going to browse for that DXF, this guy. And we can see that this has come into my project, but you can probably see that this is an outline of City Hall and City Hall is over here. So we're not quite in the right spot. But what I can do is just import this to my project. Import to project. Now I've got all of these lines and they're completely editable. So all I need to do is use my kind of base point move and snap it to the right spot. Boop. And this is not a download from exactly the same base map that Giraffe is using, but you'll get the idea. Um, yeah, it's not here. It's funny. It's like whatever it was drawn in is not exactly the same as the uh, just generic base map in Giraffe. But you get the idea there. You can move it into the exact right place. Most likely your DXF will not be this complicated. It won't have this many lines. It's usually like a lot outline or something like that. So now that we've got this here, I'm just going to lock this layer. And now I can't accidentally move this. I can't click on it. It's nothing. It's just locked there, and now I can just use it as an underlayment. So that's my best recommendation for if you get a DXF file. Geolocating it as a layer is probably really complicated. So just import it as lines, move it into place. That'll be your best bet. And then the last one I want to show is our CSV import. So this one's kind of fun. It does have a specific requirement for the formatting in the CSV. So I do just want to pull that up so that you can see what that looks like. Um, so what you want to make sure you have in your CSV file is the address. Um, this will work just fine as separated address, city, state, zip code. But what's even better is if the address has the full thing. So if it said 4900 Frankfurt Ave, Philadelphia, PA 19124, all in one cell. That's going to make it the easiest for Giraffe to kind of search and find these points. So this specific CSV that I'm using as an example is just all of the hospitals in Philadelphia. We've got a ton of them, so it's kind of a fun data set to load in. And I'm just going to add that into my project. So I'm going to click Add Data Layer. This one again is considered a vector. Browse, grab that CSV. And because it had an address to search for, it has placed a point on each of those addresses. And then you can see, because this is treated like a vector, you can style it just like any other vector. So maybe I want to style it by hospital type. And now I have this little data set of the Philadelphia hospitals added in as a CSV. Um, all right then. So let's see. Let's do as our last kind of thing, just a little image upload. And I am just going to take a quick screen grab of my actual map just to use as my image to upload so that we can see. All right, so I am going to do my image. So this is create new layer. Image now, and I am just going to browse for that image that I just took, just under screenshots. And your image, of course, will be something more meaningful than just a screen grab of the satellite, but we'll get the idea of how this works. So you can see, if I maybe make my buildings a little bit less opaque, um, here is my image that I've uploaded. Now, obviously, this is not to scale because we can see that this was an image of the convention center and it is not fitting. So what I just need to do is sort of stretch this into place. And I can adjust this north and south as needed, get everything sort of lined up. It does come in as a layer that's being edited over here, so I can make it a little bit more transparent if that is helpful to kind of try to get the roads and everything lined up. And you do just sort of adjust the scaling, the rotation, everything. And then once you're happy with it, you just save the layer and it becomes a sort of static image. I did not spend a lot of time making this truly line up, so it is definitely not perfect, but you can make it perfect if you take a little bit more time than I did. All right. Well, that is all of the different layer types that I wanted to show you today. What we looked at today was the different types of spatial data that you can load into Giraffe, how to find that spatial data using Google keywords, um, the sort of differences between the data types and which one might be better or worse depending on your project requirements. And then we looked in detail at uploading all of those different data types into our projects. We also looked at how to share those layers with our teammates, and also how to style our vector data to sort of match our needs. Um, with that, that is the conclusion of the presentation. We do have about 10 minutes left. So if anyone has any questions about spatial data or even just general draft questions, I'm happy to hang out. I'm just going to stop the recording. And then if you would be interested in asking a question live, you can just raise your hand and I will unmute you for a second to talk. So with that, thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope I see you in the next one.